When we're young, we subconsciously take on the traits that our mind thinks will keep us safe and make us more likable. And so we end up becoming helpful because it makes others happy, and we become achievers because it gets us praise. And maybe like even the opposite, maybe we become super quiet because that's what feels safest to us, is that if nobody notices us. And so integrative trauma therapist Leah Parker calls this self-abandonment. And she advises that this is the root cause of what leaves us feeling unfulfilled and disempowered in our own lives. And so, good news, because today she's going to show us how to reconnect with our body and how this is actually the key to untangling all of these identities that we have, shown the world and that we have created to survive, so that we can figure out which one is our true identity and really begin to thrive. Hey, let's make nurturing your own needs part of being a good parent. And that voice that says you have to wait till the kids are all grown up to even have needs of your own is total mind BS. Welcome, Leah. I'm so excited to have you here today. And I'm so curious, how did you discover that it's all of these layers of different identities that we pile up on ourselves that prevent us from living the happy and fulfilled and thriving lives that we are meant to?
Yeah, you know, through my work as a therapist for the many years I've been doing this, and then through my personal journey and just listening to people, even if it's just in a normal, casual setting, I noticed that one of the things that continuously came up is this push pull between who I feel like I am and who I feel like I should be.
Ooh,
And it
yes.
comes up all the time and in so many settings. And I just notice, the more that I sit with clients and sit with myself around like, if I didn't have to think about, or if I wasn't worried about how I'm going to be received, or if this is going to make me acceptable or likable or understood or safe, or like if I wasn't constantly running all these programs, like how would I want to show up in the world? Like, what would my next statement be? And it's funny because I'm having this parallel process as I'm talking about this, as I'm speaking, because obviously I'm having a lot of programs running around who's going to be listening to this. How are they going to be receiving my messaging? Am I talking in a way that makes me sound like I'm intelligent and so we're always doing it. Like I'm catching it even in this moment. And I'm going to invite myself to say, whoever needs to hear this is going to hear it. And the way I say it is going to be perfect. And I don't need to like micromanage it. Um, because I think that's what allows us to show up authentically, show up in like our truest form and our truest expression without all the programming. And that programming runs very deep because it's imprinted on us very early. Right? I'm a complex trauma therapist. And so what that means is usually going back to that 0 to 5 age range. Um, and then that next very important developmental stage, which is that like early adolescence, is another really pocket of development that some stories can get seeded in really deep. um, so we're usually going back to those areas. And what's the thread there is those are two phases of life where we're getting a lot of messaging on how relationships work. In the early one, it's like just our very template for relational beings and family. And then that early adolescence is like, how do we do this interpersonal friendship thing or this like dating thing or this like romantic thing? And so it's a little bit different templates that are being grounded in, but this very thread of like, how do I receive love? Am I lovable? And am I acceptable? And am I going to get kicked out of the tribe? Right.
Mm-hmm. My goodness, you talk about all the things that I talk about. And I just want to thank you before we move forward for being vulnerable and sharing the programs that were going through your mind as we're talking, because I think that is such an eye opener to realize that, this work is ongoing. no matter how much work we've done it with it, we're now aware of it. We can now, see it and interact with it in different ways, but it's just something that we're just going to be forever working through as we grow into
Yeah.
our, what I'm calling my 40s, my mid-adolescence. And so
I love
as I
it.
go through my mid-adolescence into what I hope will be my adult life, on the other side of that. So I am so curious because, when I started doing this work, I ended up in a group program. And one of the things we had to do was we had to write I am statements to try to find
Mm,
our true self. I am. And I couldn't do it. At that time, I
yeah.
couldn't do it. I could write a lot of I am not. I am not scared, like those type of things. But I'm like, what am I? So, how do you help people access these old programs so that they can peel back the layers and figure out which identity is truly them?
Yeah, it's a very complex and yet simple process. So, you're doing this series on somatics, and this is where that's going to come into our conversation. Is it's really bringing people back into their bodies and really allowing them to tap into their intuition and the wisdom of our innate self. So much in this world, what happens is, especially in like early life and then even in adolescence, our body's giving us a lot of information, and people are telling us not to listen to it in as so many microaggression ways. And so we start to, oh, well, I can't trust what is coming up for me. So I have to rely on other people to tell me how to feel or how to act or what's right or what's wrong. And we start to lose that connection with our own source, with our own innate wisdom. And so, what I like to do in my work is just really create a space for us to tap back into that, reconnect to that, and just try on different roles, right? And we'll deconstruct an experience. So if you're like, man, there was this moment I was having this conversation and I got stuck. I start stumbling. Like I don't know what was going on. And I just really wish I could have like just shown up more authentically. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's really well, is it okay to deconstruct that experience? Like, let's go back to those moments where the stumble was about to happen, right? And like, let's anchor into the body into that moment and let's explore the wisdom of what your system was trying to tell you. So um, that's like a main tool that we go to a lot is these deconstructions of experience because it really invites you into the experience in a more thoughtful, in a more connected, in a more wholesome way. We're not just skimming over because our brain likes to be effective. And so it's doing a lot of fast skimming, and we're not really tapping into the meat and the potatoes of the messaging. And so that's where I invite us into. And then when we're deep in there, I just invite them to try it on. Okay, well, what if you did say that thing that maybe you wanted to say? What happens in your body now? Does that actually feel more authentic? Or does it feel scary because of this old message? Is it scary because it's not you, or is it scary because you were told you weren't supposed to show up that way? Or that's being bossy, or that's being rude, or that's not ladylike, or that's like whatever the messaging was, right? And they're like, oh, actually, yeah, that actually does, man, they dim my light. Like, no, I am big, and like that's like an empowering moment for someone to really be able to like anchor in like, no, I am a big personality and that's okay. Like, fuck everyone dim in my life. And so it's just that like trying it on, seeing how it feels, and just really tuning into what is my truth and what was put on me, and practicing that discernment.
Yeah, that's key because it's hard to discern what the fear is from. Is it fear because I'm showing up authentically, or is it fear because like what I call my mind BS is saying, no,
Mhm.
don't do that, not
Yeah.
say that, say that. And so, wow, that is a really powerful method and powerful way of moving forward. So tell me what happens. People come to you and, they're in this place of trying to figure out being pulled by their internal selves in multiple different directions, what's on the other side of this work? What does their life look like when they're in the thrive phase?
Oh, love this question. I was just chatting with a client the other day, and she's like, okay, so I was having this interaction with my partner, and he triggered me. And in that moment, I was able to track name I'm triggered, why I'm triggered, what's the old story behind it, do a very quick, like, breathe into it. And then I was able to show up relationally the way I wanted to show up. Like, that's what's on the other side. It's this ability to do this really fast, like inner child reparenting work, however you want to name it, self-soothing, self-regulating, self-affirming. This remembrance of like, just because I wasn't safe at one point in time doesn't mean that it's never safe. Like, it wasn't.
Mm.
I hear you, little one, it wasn't safe then. I know that, and we're gonna try again, right? Like, and just really leaning into showing up as more of yourself. And the beautiful thing that's on the other side of it is it's deeper connection. It's more authentic connection. It's more of a vulnerable connection. It's the connection that we're all craving, but we're too fucking scared to allow into our life because of all these other programmings that are running. That is like, no, reaching for connection is scary. Or we have other programmings that receiving is scary, right? And so there's always this like block that's getting in the way of what we truly want. And that's like this we-ness, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It is scary. Especially you talk about those programs being developed in early adolescence. Well, that's when we share. And then because, early adolescence is difficult and everybody's trying to figure out their best way to connect, whatever you share gets turned into something toxic, right? Like there's the gossiping, people lose your trust, and that creates programs that it is not safe to connect. So I love that you're talking about this deepening of connections. And one thing I realized is that when you do show up as your programmed self, as most of us do through most of our lives, we actually form connections on that level.
Yes,
So like
absolutely.
I formed connections with other high achievers. And when
Mhm.
I started doing this work and getting back into myself and slowing down, those connections kind of fizzled out. And that was also very scary for me too, right? It makes me question, oh, am I not good enough now?
Oh,
But what's
yeah.
happened on the other side is I've now found people who are my soul connections.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
I
it's
thought that
beautiful.
I would have more authentic connections with the people already in my world. But what happened was that my world kind of reshifted. Like, like Mystique in the X-Men where she goes,
100%.
yeah.
I love that you bring this in because this is something that I don't think is talked about enough. I actually found myself I like wrote a poem about this not too long ago as I was like deepening my own inner work. And you know, we do have an innate resistance around really healing because of this right here. Because we know, like, we can sense that if I truly heal and I start to show up differently, then these connections that are already established, I'm going to grow out of them. It becomes really tricky with family.
Mm.
um, and so that's where like I was kind of noticing there was some hesitance of like if I grow too much, like do I not fit in my core circle anymore, which is my core family. And that can be really, really scary, right? Um, and that's not true though. So I just want y'all to know, like truly on the other side, like you can be healed and then create those relationships in a new way that honor you and your new self with lovely boundaries and things like that. They don't have to disappear. Like it's not that black and white, but it feels that way, especially in the beginning. And you will notice that even some of your friendships, like you're operating at a new frequency and y'all just don't vibe anymore. It's it's like every time I'm around this person, I feel so drained. What is this? And you're like, oh, I'm really like how much of myself I used to give to maintain this, and that no longer works for me. there's like, so yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was surprising to me. So it's good that we're talking about, as we do this work, as we move into thriving, it may not look exactly as, we expected it to look, but it's even better.
Even better. Yeah.
Even better, because we
Yeah.
didn't even know what was possible. So if somebody is ready to start this work and they're like, yes, I want to get started today, what would you advise them?
First step is always awareness, increasing awareness. We can't do anything with information that we don't know, we don't understand. And so it's really just setting aside time to sit with yourself. As scary or as boring as that may seem, for some of us, it seems really scary. For others, it seems really, really boring. But it's essential. It is key. I do have a free journal that you can download and kind of just start building that into your daily practice, and just it's going to guide you into asking those more reflective questions of really kind of encouraging you and inviting you to start to track those subtleties, the like, what is behind that knee-jerk reaction, what is behind me giving the dirty look and being passive aggressive, and why can't I just name that the thing that I want to happen? Why is that so hard? um that has happened to me many, many times. And so if you never slow down, then you don't ever actually acknowledge, like, what is the need that's not being met, that I'm being triggered by, that I just don't know how to express, you know? And so that's where I would start if it's by yourself. If you're ready, support is always, you can only bring yourself so far, because we are designed to heal in connection and relationship. That's how we develop our sense of self, is through reflection. And so having that reflection in a safe container is really important as you start to rediscover that who am I once I rip away all these layers. And so reaching out to a trusted therapist, a trusted coach, someone who has walked the walk, who can create the space for you and guide you on that journey, is really important.
Fantastic. So I will drop all of Leah's links in the description so that you can access that free resource, check out her website, see if she might be the right fit for you to help guide you through this process of identifying your true self. And I want to advise too that though that resistance, whether it looks like, oh, that's boring, or gosh, no, that's scary, those are both programs. Those are both your mind BS telling you to, hey, just run the dang programs. We made these programs to make you safe, just run the programs. And so getting through that, getting to the other side, doing the exercises, just like Leah said, and just like she offered you, is going to help reprogram those messages.
Absolutely. Repetition is key.
So I'm super curious, Leah, how did you end up working in this field and helping to guide people in this way through trauma and identifying their true identity?
I definitely had my own experiences through childhood, leading into adolescence, leading to early adulthood, that a lot of programs got got registered, got put in. My adolescence was a little bit strange because I went from a school that I attended, from kindergarten to 6th grade. 7th grade, I went to a boarding, well, for 8th grade, I went to a boarding school. And that was with people who were a higher SES than me naturally, because my father had money, but I'd never lived with him. So my mother, my family, we were like middle class. He was probably like upper middle class. So now I'm being thrown into a group of people who are upper middle class people. And they operate different than I did, right? And so now I'm 12, 13 years old trying to like figure, like, this is a whole new social rules, like there's everything's different. That was really hard for me. So my identity was forming in this really like tumultuous way of like, okay, now I have like all these downloads I have to download and get like really quickly so I can fit in. Then my father ended up dying that year, and so I couldn't return back to that school. So then the following year, for my freshman year for ninth grade, I went to not my original school, but a low SES school where I was the minority. So talk about some dramatic flips. And so that was another experience where, okay, well, forget everything you just learned. Now you have to download all these new because this is a totally different etiquette, totally different thing. And so that was really difficult because I got so lost in that process, right? Um, just trying not to be alone. Just
Yeah.
trying to like have some kind of tribe, some kind of friends, some kind of of attachment connection. Um, and then moving into early adulthood, I joined the Marine Corps at 17. And so then that's like a whole new download because that is a very regimented, very like it is very clear on how you are supposed to be. There's very clear messaging. So then you had to like, okay, well, now I have to readapt to this thing. And so when I got out of the military, I went through a journey of peeling back the layers, right? Because I'm like, from 12 to 27, I have been trying to figure out how to fit into these different boxes. And now, for the first time in a long time, like I have the freedom to create my own fucking box. I don't have to fit in anyone else's box. This is amazing. And it was terrifying, but it was so worth it because at the end of those layers, I really discovered a really beautiful human being that would have never seen the light of day had I stayed so stuck in all of that programming.
Thank you so much for sharing that, crazy journey. It sounds like you learned to be a chameleon, right? You learned to fit
Mm.
into whatever environment you were plopped into. And I'm so curious, when you got out of that at 27, how did you know that you needed to peel back the layers, and stop being this chameleon instead of using that superpower to just fit into whatever environment you were currently finding yourself in?
Well, it wasn't really working because I was having identity crisis, right? Because so much of the Marine Corps, what their messaging is you are a Marine first. So much of your identity gets locked into I'm a Marine. So then when that was stripped away from me, it's like, well, who the fuck am I now? Pardon my French, And I went through, I spiraled into a depression. I turned to very old teenage coping skills of like using to numb away. And it was, it was going nowhere fast. And so I finally stepped into a therapy office, and that therapist was patient and was kind. And I had to go through a few of them though. So that's a normal part of your journey. I had to fire a few therapists, okay, guys, before I landed on one who my system was like, you know what, we can do this work with them. So just if that's you, if you've had to fire a few, don't give up. Like your person is out there. Um, and I didn't know that that's what I needed to do, but I had a very beautiful guide who just helped reflecting it back to me. And that's just kind of what started happening.
Yeah, so you're like the rest of us. You have to smack and hit rock bottom before you can start
Yeah.
figuring it out. So yeah, that's what made me curious. I was like, how did you know? Because I had to, smash my face on the pavement and burn out. And most people have to hit some sort of type of crisis before they realize, oh dang, this isn't working, and I don't know why.
Yeah, that's super normal.
Yeah.
For as something that we need to understand, and I teach this to my couples a lot, but in order for someone to choose to do something different, there has to be enough stress in the system and also enough safety too, right? For our system to be able to have the capacity to observe and choose a new path. So if we're just like moseying along and nothing like the stress isn't elevating, then we'll just stay in that status quo for as long as we possibly can, right? Because our system wants homeostasis above all else. So, but if we reach a state of extreme burnout, or if we're kind of spiraling down the hole of depression or any other of those beautiful disorders that are out there, um, then that's usually enough stress in the system to be like, holy crap, I need help with this. And it's when we take that first step that then the safety is brought in to then start to create the change.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for coming and sharing this wisdom with us today. Before we sign off, are there any last words of wisdom that you want to leave our audience with?
I just want to reiterate that, this is a lifelong journey. And I don't mean that in a way that it's lifelong, like it's always going to be hard, because it does get really easy. Just like your old programming is second nature and it's really easy with enough intention and enough space, that new programming becomes just as easy. It's just that we're going to want to flip into default mode sometimes. And the lifelong is just really sitting in that reflection and holding space for those more tender parts of ourselves. And so the other thing is please, 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 whatever you do, do not compare your journey to someone else's. Never, ever, ever, ever do that, because yours is going to be on your timeline. It's going to be unique to you, and it's going to unfold exactly how it's supposed to unfold. And when we start comparing our journey to other people's, we lose sight of our uniqueness, and we are brought to points in our lives on purpose. And someday that low point that you're in right now is going to be your gift to the world. And so just know that you were brought there for a reason and that you can get out of it.
Beautiful. I love that idea that that low point is going to be your gift to the world. Beautiful, because you and I are both here because we hit that low point.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Leah. I appreciate you being here with us, and I hope our paths cross again.
I hope so too. It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Hit subscribe and let's see if we can make life balance the norm.
So just remember, buck dimming your light. Shine as bright as you want to shine.